Recently, One Piece passed the 1000 chapter mark, and now that I'm making videos, I decided that it was high time I make a video about one of my favorite things ever. This video is going to get into some minor spoilers, but nothing that will ruin the series for anyone who's looking for a starting point for the series or anything like that. I really just want to talk about what makes One Piece so good, and why it's worth your time despite there being over 1000 chapters. I think that there are three main areas of interest that people will point to when discussing how amazing One Piece truly is, and perhaps the most obvious one is the world building. The other two being the characters and the storytelling. If you have ever had a conversation with anyone about One Piece that has either read or watched it, they've probably talked about the world building at some point. That is for a very good reason. Nothing is spared by Oda when he crafts the world that the story takes place in. Each new island the Straw Hats visit has its own personality, architecture, culture, and landscapes. For example, Alabasta takes place on a desert island with buildings that look like they belong there. The people of Alabasta wear clothes that allows them to withstand the heat the sun brings in the desert, and water is the most valuable thing to the people that live there. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Drum Island, which is a winter island with animals that are built to withstand the brutal snowstorms that the winter brings, and the people there are always wearing coats, and there are fires around the town to keep people warm. The world building doesn't just start and end with the different types of land that people stumble upon. There are three major powers in play in One Piece. Those powers are the world government, which is represented by the Marines, the Revolutionary Army, which aims to take down the world government, and the pirates, who are just a disorganized group of individual gangs of pirates who each have their own goals. Even within these factions, there are groups that have prestige that come along with them. The world government, there are different ranks, and the most threatening of those being the admirals, who seem to have world-altering powers. There are also different levels of pirates, with the top dogs being referred to as the Yonko or the Four Emperors, and another faction of pirates called the Shishibukai or the Seven Warlords of the Sea, who work with the Marines in order to maintain order in the world. Oda spends a lot of time hyping up these characters for the readers of his story, and when they finally appear on screen, the moments that they produce are some of the most memorable in the whole series. One of my favorite little things that Oda does to make the world feel even more alive than it already is something called cover pages. So at the beginning of each chapter of One Piece, there is a cover page, and Oda will do one of two things. He will either draw a fan request, which could be something absolutely ridiculous about one of the characters doing something, or Oda can draw a mini story over the course of many chapters that we can follow along with. These mini stories have actual impact on the story, and sometimes even set up insanely major plot points for the future of the series. There are also countless small things that Oda sprinkles into the story to make it feel even more crazy. Things like bounty posters, which serve as an estimation of how threatening a character might be. Or when characters or name drop locations only for us to magically end up there 500 chapters later and we go like, oh snap, this guy already talked about it. And also there's these things called devil fruits, which are maybe the main power system in the whole series. They're basically just wacky fruits that when you eat them you get some kind of crazy power, ranging from turning into a hamster person to becoming a lightning person. But you do lose your ability to swim when you eat one, so this might be a downside for a world composed of ocean and islands. I could go on and on about the different ways that Oda expands the world and makes it feel even more alive than it could be, but I think it's time we start talking about some of the other things. For example, I want to talk about the characters next. Obviously, if you're going to get into a long series, you want to have characters that are not only compelling but lovable. So I think there's no better place to start than looking at the main Straw Hat crew. Now obviously there is the main himbo trio of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji who serve as the main fighters of the group and offer protection for those who aren't as strong. Luffy is the main character of the series and is a big reason for the success of it. He's extremely lovable despite how hard-headed he can be and how immensely stupid he is at times. Zoro is basically a cool guy with swords, and he gets lost a lot, but he's also one of the smartest fighters in the whole show. Sanji can really only be described as the biggest simp of all time, but he is cool, and he's also the smartest of these three bozos, and is often more calculated than the other two. I know that there are a lot more Straw Hats than just this, but I think I want to also just talk about Nami and Usopp because they are part of the original gang. Nami is first introduced as a thief who will do anything for money, but is quickly shown to be a much deeper and more caring character than is let on. She has insanely good navigation skills, and the whole crew would probably be helpless without her. And finally, Usopp is the sniper of the crew, but instead of using a gun like a normal pirate might, he uses a slingshot, which is kind of funny, and he also uses things like eggs and hot sauce to beat people. And on top of that, he's also a coward who can use his lies to get the upper hand on others. I know I didn't get super deep into these characters, but that's because I want people who haven't experienced them to come to their own conclusions about them. Aside from the main good guys of the series, there are countless side characters who are amazing, and sometimes become more popular than members of the main cast. Many of these characters are either villains or former villains. Two of my personal favorite characters are Buggy the Clown and Crocodile, both of which were enemies to Luffy and the gang at some point. Many other people still wish that characters like Vivi had joined the crew because they're so well written, and people didn't want to experience the story without them. No matter who you are, this series does have a character for you, and they will be interesting. There are hardly any one-note characters to be found, and that's extremely hard to do when it feels like you have over 1 million named characters in the series. The last major draw of the series that I want to cover is how Oda is able to accomplish storytelling in such a fantastic manner. I can tell you right now that it takes a special person to be able to make a story that has over 1,000 chapters not only bearable, but immensely interesting week by week. When a new chapter is released, there's something world-shattering that occurs and the whole fan base freaks out, because it just keeps getting better and we don't know how it's possible. Like many other shonen manga, One Piece consists of many different story arcs. These story arcs are always linked together in some way, because not a single detail goes unnoticed. For example, the way that Punk Hazard leads into Dressrosa, which then leads into Zoe and Whole Cake Island, is insane. In a series this long, it can feel like arcs follow a similar pattern. This being that the crew finds an island, they then explore the island, they discover some kind of problem going on, and then they solve that problem. While this is mostly the case, no two arcs in the story actually feel alike because of the different ways that Oda manipulates this structure into leading us down one thought process only to pull the rug from under us. The prime example of this being the Alabasta arc. This section is going to contain spoilers for the Alabasta arc. Do not watch this if you have not seen it or read it yet. Please. There will be a timestamp to when I'm done talking about it. So, at this point in the story, we have been traveling with Vivi for a while, and we already know that the goal is to defeat Crocodile, who is trying to cause a civil war in the kingdom in order to get an extremely powerful weapon which could make him the most powerful person in the world. What we aren't prepared for is how much of a threat Crocodile is. Luffy, up to this point, has not had any real problems beating up anyone in his path. What Luffy doesn't know is that he's about to cross paths with one of the 7 warlords. Luffy expects to waltz in and beat his ass, and that's what we think he's going to do too. We haven't been shown any evidence that anyone can actually beat Luffy yet. Then, when Luffy finally encounters Crocodile and tries to punch him, Crocodile just explodes into sand and then stabs a Luffy in the chest with a cartoonish hook and leaves him to die in the middle of the desert. We've never seen anything like this in this series before, and it just shocks you when you see it for the first time. Luffy has taken beatings before, but we've never seen someone just destroy him like that before. This is really the second time that we actually get the feeling that there are truly bigger fish out there, and it's a complete shock when you see it for the first time. Looking back on it, some of the best arcs in the manga actually have Luffy lose at some point, now that I think about it. So anyway, that is going to be the end of my One Piece ramblings for today. I appreciate if you watched it all the way through. Sometimes my writing is very off the wall. I really recommend watching or reading this series, but especially reading the manga because it is so incredibly amazing week to week. For those of you who have already seen or read the series, I want you guys to let me know if I missed any details that make the series better in your eyes, or what makes the series work for you personally. And if someone's watching this and they didn't like it, I'm kind of curious to see at what point you gave up on the story, because I feel like sometime around the Arlong Park arc is when the series truly becomes great. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on too long in my conclusion. Have a nice day. See you later.